Hey guys, good morning. We'll do something interesting here. We've just spawned in on the runway in Saint John, New Brunswick. We'll do an IFR flight in rainy conditions. I set rain, but doesn't seem to be rainy right where we're at. Let's try it again. I'll switch it back, see what happens. Rain. Nah, still gave me the same. That's fine. We'll hit patches of rain on the way. I'm okay with that. And yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to take off from Saint John, New Brunswick. We're going to intercept an Airway, follow that to Moncton, and then do an NDB approach, all without GPS. And we'll see how it goes. So what I generally do is I use my phone. I'll put the screen up here if I can get it there. And I use an app called Flight Plan Go. It's on my home screen there. It's halfway up the page there. Click on that. Loads in like this. I have Saint John Airport already selected up top. And what I do is I can select the procedures. All the plates are here, everything that we'll need for our departure. And when we change to the other airport, I can put it in up top there. Plus we have maps. So if I go to maps, I can go zoom into where we are. Oops. There's an old flight plan there. But what we're going to do is actually go from... This is Saint John, right here. We're going to follow this Victor 311 all the way up to Moncton, where we're going to intersect the NDB and come in for the NDB runway 29. So I will go through all this with you, and let's go back to the airport view, and we're going to select our departure to check it out. So Hampton 3 departure, we're on runway 32. So let's read it. First part, it says runway 32 requires a minimum climb gradient of 370 feet per nautical mile to 900 feet. Climbing right turn heading 015 for vectors. Maintain 5,000 or as assigned. So that makes pretty good sense. Let's check out the next part of this. We go to our departures page again, part B, and it just shows you a picture of the route. And you can see where we'll take off, then we'll make that turn. And the reason why we're making that turn, there's a restricted area that's sometimes active by NOTAM, but right next to it there's a restricted area that's always restricted. It's over Gagetown, New Brunswick, so that keeps you clear of it. And if there's a NOTAM, ATC would be on it and giving you a vector long before you got anywhere near there, so it just helps that transition. So that's the Hampton 3 departure. I'll bring up the airport chart too, just to show you. And all the stuff that you need is here as well. We're going to be taking off runway 32, which of course goes up there. And this is all the other information we need. Departure procedure, and it's talking about all the runways. Runway 32, it says half mile. Viz requires a climb gradient 370 feet per nautical mile. We've already read that to 900. No right turn below 1,000 feet. Now that's a little bit different because it says climbing right turn after 900 feet, but this here directs you not until 1,000 feet. So we're going to wait till 1,000 before we make that turn. It also says or spec viz, climb in visual conditions to cross the airport at or above 1,200 feet before proceeding on course. That's because there's a hill over there somewhere, so you can see it actually. Okay. That all makes sense? Clear as mud? So we're gonna get the plane set up now. And what we're gonna do is, in this case, I'm going to get rid of this stick again. You don't need that. For this flight, we're not using any GPS, so I'm going to switch this button down here from nav to GPS side of it, but it actually switches it to nav. So these are backwards. I think it's just a mistake. And now we're on nav mode, okay? We don't have to worry about any GPS inputs or weird stuff happening because of it. I am going to use heading today. Sometimes I use track, depending on if I'm using these other screens. Kind of need to use track when zoomed in, because if I put it on heading mode, that track disappears. But we're not going to do that right now. Go with the full screen, back to the normal screen we were on, and we're going to use heading mode, which we're in. I'm going to dial my heading to heading of 015, just like the departure says to do, and that's 015. We can climb as high as 5,000. That's already set up here. You can see that. To keep things simple, I'm going to set up my speed to 200 knots while we're on the ground, so I don't have to worry about it later. It takes forever to dial this. I'm getting there. Oh, yeah, of course, 201. There we go. There's the 200 knots. So we have our speed set up for once we get airborne. We wouldn't be doing all this on the runway in real life. We would have done all this on the apron and been much closer to ready before we actually left. So I'm going to go back to our map and just look at the frequencies we'll need. Okay, so Vector 311, the outbound radial is going to be 066 off the Saint John VOR, and that's 113.5. So let's tune in 113.5 as our main for now. 113.5, and we're pretty close. We'll probably pick it up right on the ground. All right. And there, we did pick it up, so that's good. Our next frequency when we arrive in Moncton, that one is going to be, sorry, I gotta zoom out a bit, 117.3. So we'll have that as our standby. Okay. Our track is 066 from the Saint John VOR, and to do that you can change it with the course knob here, but we can't really see it, so I'm going to switch this ND screen over to the VOR one. That's just one dial over. You could use this one as well, which they call the ILS one. I don't see the difference, but it works fine either way. And we're going to set up 066. There we go. That was a little slow. I'm sorry. Anyways, of course, 066 is in there. That's what we're going to track outbound. And that is it for this. We do have to tune in the NDB. If you go further on this plate here, this map, you can see the Moncton NDB is 224. I'm going to set that in here as well. So we'll, with this dial, trying to zoom in better so you can see what I'm doing. With this dial, you can move the big number down to 2. With this one, you have to click the center of it to change between numbers. Now I can move the middle number because I clicked the center. So there's the 22. I click the center again. It goes back to the other number. And we've got 224. Alright, so that's our NDB. As you can see, we're not getting a signal yet. If I switch this, you'll see the man switch here. If you see the down arrow that I'm getting with my mouse, when I click that, watch down here, it changes the modes. There's 3 different modes. There's one that shows nothing. There's another one that shows ADF. Right? It's showing that's our ADF, that's our frequency, but we're not picking anything up here yet. You'd see an arrow. So, and we're back on that other screen, so we're not going to worry about any of that right now. Put it back to the one that was on before. And I went back. We were here. I'm going back to the original screen just with the heading for now. I'm not going to get distracted with the VOR just on our takeoff because we have the departure to follow. Everything's all set up. And Let's get going. We would call Saint John Radio, let them know we are on the roll, runway 32 for the Hampton 3 departure. I'm going to do a static power up before we go. Park brake is getting released. I got my brakes on, trying to hold them on. There we go. It was starting to go anyways. Bringing the power up to mill. It's on thrust now. There's mill. Releasing the brakes. We get as much speed as we can because there is a hill at the end of this runway. And we'll get airborne. B1 rotate. Positive rate gear up. Remember, no turns below 1,000 feet. Here's a 900, 1,000. Turning to a heading of 015. Continuing a gentle climb. And once we get it turned out to that heading, I'm going to turn on autopilot. Alright, so we're good on the heading 015. Wings are pretty stable position here. Gonna hit heading out. I'm gonna increase the alt before I actually engage it. And engage. And I'm gonna keep the altitude up to 5,000, which is our departure. We'll continue our climb, turning on our speed so it maintains 200 knots for us. We don't need to go any faster than that for this. And that's our departure. I would call Saint John Radio, say we're clear of the zone. They'd switch us over to Moncton Center, call Moncton Center. They give us our next step. So let's just say they say maintain 5,000 and intercept the Victor 311. Okay, so if they had said that, what I'm going to do is put on my map mode right here. And I'm going to bring back to this screen. It shows that it's on the other side of us. So we're going to have to rotate. In this case, to show my heading, I'm going to bring back my track view. I did that with this button here. And we're going to go back and intercept. It does a very steep turn. We're probably going to lose altitude, but it's okay. We're just going to come in with a gentle intercept angle here. We'll see once we see that needle start coming in. We're going to follow it. But remember, we're on nav mode as far as this switch goes down here. The nav GPS, it's on nav, even though it shows GPS. Can't tell you how many times I say that because it shouldn't be that way. I don't want people to think it's the wrong thing. And our course is 066, which is pointing that way. Maybe I'll go a little bit steeper of an intercept so it happens a little faster. And we're only 3 miles away from the VOR, so we should see it soon. When this TV mode is up and you get your full map screen, it's great. But if you don't have your track mode selected and you're using the heading like we did when we took off, you won't see that. So you don't know where you have the plane directed to. So I just leave it, when I'm in this view, I leave it on track. Okay. Later on, we're going to switch it back to heading. There, our track is alive. And I'm going to just coax the heading to go along with it. And then while it's making this turn, I'm going to hit this mode here where it says nav. And you'll see it when I swapped that over. It switched to LNAV VOR. And it's doing its own intercept now. And autopilot's fully taken over here. 5,000 feet, 200 knots, following the Airway Victor 311 to Moncton. And we'll let that stabilize. We could be using GPS, of course, and you could load in a GPS assisted NDB and let it do its thing pretty automatically, but that's not the point. You want to do an NDB approach. You want to do the actual NDB approach. That's what I would think. So right now, this instrument, I'll take a little time to tell you about how this one works in this plane. I've never had one exactly like this in any other plane that I've actually flown. So I've had NDBs. I've flown NDBs with ADFs and stuff before, but not this particular ADF. Centering my heading bug. That way if something happens, we can maintain our track that we're on. And, okay. So, this has picked up our NDB, but you think the arrow's pointing at it. It's not. What it is this is pointing at it. The tail of this arrow is actually pointing at the direction where the NDB is, and it's, you know, it's like not straight ahead of us. If this arrow was straight up and down or pointing straight down, the NDB would be straight ahead of us. But in this case, it's off to our right just a little bit. And what happens is when we pass over the NDB, this always points towards it with the tail. So this course, see, I'm afraid when I change it, it's going to change our tracking. So watch what happens. Like you see it changes down here, but it also changes this. I don't want to change that. I want to keep this on 066 for the airway that we're on. But anyways, you want to put that straight up and down when we're done using the airway, so we'll do that later and I'll explain it. You're going to be flying towards the NDB with this arrow up top and this arrow down bottom, so it looks pretty symmetrical. When you pass over the NDB, this bottom arrow flips around to the top and you have one arrow just pointing up top, and that lets you know that you're FAF inbound. You're past your NDB and you're inbound to the runway. So just keep that in mind. That's all that does. Now this is only a short airway. We can pick up the Moncton side of it if we really wanted to, and maybe I'll do that just to make it easy. I might, you know what? Actually, I don't even have to, because I could swap it over, and this will be the Moncton one. You'll see it'll still catch it and track it. I'd have to change the heading, or sorry, the course style a little bit, but we're just going to leave it. I like that it stayed on track. When I switched things over, it didn't start doing its own thing or messing around. So I flip back up the nav mode. We're still tracking this nav. It did turn this off when I swapped that. So keep that in mind. Sometimes when you change a button, it does affect others, but in this case, that was actually helpful because it didn't make us deviate from our course at all. I would have to look at the map, and it's on the 248 degree radial from the Moncton VOR, so it would be just a little bit off on the course. It'd be 068 instead of 066 that we would dial in. Well, you know what? I'll show you what I mean. So we'll, instead of letting this do it, I'm just going to hit center my heading bug. I'm going to hit track select, or this heading down here, and it brings up track select. Okay, so now we're following that. Doesn't matter what I do with the nav. I'm going to swap this frequency over. There's the Moncton one, and you'll see if I dial the course to 068, it should center pretty good. Oh, wrong way. Pretty close, right? And that's, the airway's not perfect, but that's how we would now navigate to the Moncton VOR. So now once again I'll swap this over. I'll let it do another gentle turn to intercept, just bring that track in a little bit, and now we're going right for that VOR. This is more useful for what we're doing. If it doesn't do a really steep turn here, it appears to be doing a pretty good sized turn, but I think it's going to correct it. Anyways, because this gives us our DME inbound to the VOR, so we know we're 50 miles back from Moncton. So I didn't have to swap it over like that, but I think for this information that we're getting at the bottom with the distance, it's going to be more helpful for our timing and, you know, planning our approach out. And sometimes it's a little bit, like it banks too much and it creates these S-turns that are unnecessary. And the heading response is a little slow, so I believe in future updates that this plane could be made amazing for navigating like this. It just needs some tweaks. Okay, now we're on the other track, 068 direct to the Moncton VOR, which is still the same Victor 311. And I'm going to center my heading bug. There we go, that's centered. And I'm just going to look at the plate here. At this point, we can start our descent. I'm going to request Moncton Center. Hunter 123 like to request lower, and say they gave us back with 3,000. That's a common one they give going into Moncton. So descend 3,000, Hunter 123, and we'll set that up. $3,000 We would do our descent checks, and all that stuff would have been done if we had an actual checklist. I don't have that, so we're just kind of winging it. See what I did there? Anyways, going to 3,000. This will level. We'll ensure it does. I got my approach plate up here. We're going to do the NDB runway 29 into Moncton. And let's read it here. It's dated effective November 5th of 2020. The 100-mile safe altitude is 4,000 feet. Sector altitude from our direction is 2,900 feet. Procedure turns recommended at 3,000 feet, so we're gonna stick to that, and that's where we're descending to anyways. Once we're procedure turn inbound, we go down to 900 feet. Recommended FAF crossing altitude at the QM NDB is 1350 down to our minimums, the MDA of 620. Our final approach track is 285 degrees. We will be doing a procedure turn, so what's going to happen from our direction, we're going to do a modified racetrack, meaning we're going to go direct towards the NDB. Once we go outbound, we're going to turn to a heading of 060, which is 45 degrees less than the outbound course of 105. And we'll fly that for 45 seconds, then turn to our outbound parallel track of 105 degrees. Fly that for 1 minute, and then turn inbound and fly hopefully what's close to a 2-minute leg on a 285 degree track back to the runway. And that'll be our full procedure turn. We'll be landing just below our max landing weight. I didn't change anything, but we didn't burn much fuel either. And that's it. Normally I'd ask if you have any questions, but I'm not flying with anybody, so we do have timings to keep in mind, and we're going to be coming in around 140 knots. And once we pass the FAF, which is the Moncton NDB, we'll have to look for a time of 1 minute and 30-ish seconds. If we come up to that time and we don't see the runway, we'll have to go missed. Okay. Clear as mud once again. So now we'll just pretend Moncton Center cleared us direct to the Moncton NDB. We have that tuned in. We have an indication here that we do have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the screen back. But maybe before I do, I'm going to change this from LNAV VOR to track select. So I'm going to center our track, make sure it's always center. I'm going to hit this heading button, which gives us track select up here. I'm going to take this screen, change it back to our original. With our original, I can now switch this to heading mode. Right, so we now have a heading bug, which just makes it easier to see what our track is. And now it's pointing us to the VOR because that's that screen. So remember that manual button down here on the bottom? When you get that bottom arrow, you click down 1, down 2. Now it's showing ADF information. So the arrow on our screen is actually it's pointing towards the ADF. We can adjust this course knob now, and I want this arrow straight up and down. Okay, so now that arrow's straight up and down. That's just going to be a reference for us when we're on final and everything. And yeah, so we'll pretend they cleared us to the Moncton NDB. So I'm going to turn the aircraft with the heading, and you can see it says heading select there now since we swapped that over. And we're going to go direct to the NDB. This is tricky during windy days because you have to figure out the wind correction on your own. This is old school nav, but it's good. Now if we start drifting one way or the other, we'll try to make up for it by whatever heading we select, but hopefully that's not going to happen. Now, doing it this way, we aren't using any GPS. Luckily, the technology in this plane does give us a map underneath us, so we are going to see where we're coming up. Like Cassid, that's one of the waypoints for the ILS 06 into Moncton, right? So you're going to see familiar points if you fly from around here. But for what we're doing, this is great. This works good. Now you see we're going direct to the NDB pretty much. And now this looks symmetrical. We're pretty close to it. I could probably cut over a little bit to the right and make that perfectly symmetrical, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just making sure that we're going directly towards it. So it's these two instruments. You want this one, and use all the information you can. Just know that this arrow, the tail always points at the NDB, and with this one, the plus always points at the NDB. We still have our VOR tuned up for Moncton, and that's that magenta that you see up here that's pointing at the VOR. So, just good to know. More information you understand for situational awareness really does help. And we're going to let this work out, I hope. Nice to have a coffee while going for a flight. If I zoom out one more time, will I see anything? Two is too many. Yeah, there we go. So, there's another NDB that we're actually going to go over, but it's not the one we're looking for. That's the ZQM. We are just going to the QM. That's ZQM there. We're not right over it. We're going to fly kind of beside it. And here's the airport up here. We'll probably even get a visual if we really wanted, but I don't want that. We're going to do the full procedure. See some of the areas of Moncton. Nice rain showers in the area. Oh, starting to see some lights go through the clouds there. We'll ignore those. We'll pretend we don't see those. Alright, as you can see at the top of the map here, QM is right here, and we're moving in. Our track is putting us pretty close to right over it, so that's good. Trying to use the screen recording feature on my phone to show you the next step, because there's a timer on this. but the pause button on my recording is right where the timer button is on the app. So I'm not gonna bring that screen up for this part. I'm just gonna use the timer on here, but in the corner of in the top corner of the Flight Plan Go app, there's a little stopwatch, and you can click that, and that sets it up to give you a stopwatch for these types of things. Alright, so I didn't talk much about the procedure turn. We're going to do the modified race course once we go over the NDB. In this case, we'll pretend we were cleared for the approach. And I think, actually, no, I did. I briefed it. But we're going to immediately turn to a heading of 060 once we cross the NDB. So I have my bugs ready, and it's going to be only about a, 20-degree turn, maybe 15-degree turn to the left. We're going to fly that for 45 seconds, then we're going to go outbound to a track of 105 degrees. Zoom in the range a bit. See, it's actually tracking over it pretty good. Moncton NDB is right here. We're maintaining our 200 knots, and depending on what Moncton Center wanted to do, I'm not sure if they would have handed us over to tower at this point or not. They may have, in this fantasy flight. So we'll just pretend they gave us over to tower. We were cleared the approach via the NDB full procedure. So in this case, once we cross over the NDB, you'll see this arrow flip. Don't try to chase it. You can see it on our map. As you get close, it's going to get real sensitive and flip around. So just keep that in mind, that just let it go, and once you pass over, it'll stabilize again. Moncton Tower, Hunter 123 is procedure turn outbound, and we'll set our heading up to 060. That's 45 degrees less than our 105 degree outbound track. I'm going to start my timer. Right now, we're going to fly for 45 seconds. Okay. So you'll see our NDB is going to be a bit offset now because we're no longer going directly. It might center here, but once we make our turn in, it's going to be a bit offset until we get on track again. But that's okay. It would eventually center if we just kept going this heading, but we're going to go in another 15 seconds. We're going to go to a track of 105, and that's where you'll see the offset. But right now, we're more so just concerned with the timing and the heading that we're on. Alright, so there's our 45 seconds. Hit stop, reset there, and I'm going to turn to a heading of 105. Like I said, this can be quite tricky on really windy days because your wind corrections, if you're doing them all in your head, you're going to be lucky if you get them right. I don't like how fast this thing overturns. Like, the bank just goes too steep and doesn't actually help. It hinders it. So we went a little bit past our 105. We're going back to it. Starting my timer now. And there is going to be 1 minute at this heading. And then we'll turn inbound. As you can see, the tail's pointing towards the NDB, but see the offset? And that's because we're no longer heading directly away from it. But when we turn back in, we're going to try to keep that as centered as possible. So my timer now, we have 36 seconds. And another thing to note, it's kind of important if you can try to keep your speed constant. This plane is easy because it has an auto throttle. But for your timing, that way you know you'll be consistent when you're making these turns. There's our minute. Stopping the clock, turning, procedure turn inbound. We're going to bring it right around to a heading of 285. I'm going to try to not let it oversteer too much or overbank like it is here, but it can be worse. I've seen myself lose 1,000 feet because of a heading change because the plane just doesn't handle headings very well at slower speeds. So hopefully that gets fixed. I'm just doing it slowly just to control that bank angle. Alright, so we're almost there. Actually, it's looking pretty good. We want this arrow to meet the 285 mark here. And then once we do that, we'll be pretty much dead center where we want to be. So as that arrow moves in, we're going to try to match our heading to it at 285, which is our inbound track. Pretty good. Worked out alright. And Moncton Tower, Hunter 123 is on final. Runway 29 for the NDB 29. Okay. There we go. Let's see if this heading actually keeps up with it. This is the way we want to go. We're on final. Going to bring our speed back now. I will start a timer. Should be about 2 minutes. You know what? I'm going to wait a little bit to bring our speed back. It's just exactly as I just said, that for consistency. You're better off to keep it that way. So if we can keep this speed for about a minute, then we should be halfway to the NDB. Because it's 2-minute legs in this procedure turn. Right? So our NDB's drifted a little bit. So we're going to make up for that drift by leading it and bringing it back to 285. And notice how this is almost symmetrical. So you wanna lead that a bit so that arrow falls back so it's centered here. Okay? And that'll be your wind correction. Good practice. This is actually kinda neat. So there. Our minute's almost up. I'm gonna lower my gear. 200 knots is safe in this aircraft. Our flaps are automatic, so I didn't have to touch anything. So that's welcomed as well. And we are good down to 900 feet, so at about this point I'm going to start reducing our altitude to I'm going to go down to 1500 feet and see what that gives us. That's just a choice. The FAF says to be over the NDB at 1350. Now I will bring our speed back just because we have to landing, but it looked like it would have worked out pretty good. Correcting my heading for our track now that we've got our NDB back on course. I might have to go a little bit in the other direction now. A little tricky. NDBs are fun. So I want 140 knots in the speed. And the reason why I'm going a little faster with the 140 is because if we level off at whatever altitude we chose, which I said 15, which we did, that's not going to be low enough. I mean, I am going to go to the 900, as the weather's a little bit worse than expected. And we're allowed to in the plate, so we'll go 900 feet. If we level off, then what it does, there we passed our FAF, you see the NDB flip. So what that means, if you look up here, we have one solid arrow, so everything's looking the way it should. We're going to level off at 900 feet, which is our actually we're past that, so we can go down to 620. I'll put 700 in the box. That's our MDA. And our timing, we'll start it, but I'm gonna actually I missed my mark to do it exactly on the plate. It said about 1 minute and 30 seconds. We'll make it a minute and 20 seconds because I was a little bit behind on starting that. But the runway's getting in sight, so that's okay. We'll assume Moncton Tower cleared us to land. We have visual now. And, alright, that's looking good. Since we have visual, I'm bringing my speed back a little bit further. In fact, I'm going to disconnect the auto throttle and just use it manual. And we'll go in and land. Autopilot's off. And I accidentally bumped the throttle up too much, but that's fine. We can bring it back and land. Such a fun plane. And once you learn how to use some of the systems like this, it just makes it even more fun. A few things I really wish it would fix, like the heading following and the bank angle being too steep, but other than that, I mean, it's amazing. There we go. Alright, so that was our IFR flight from Saint John to Moncton, New Brunswick. If you're familiar with Moncton, the famous flight school is over here, Moncton Flight College, back there. This is payware scenery that I got from the marketplace. Pretty good. Every other bit of scenery I have around the Maritimes, like Halifax and Charlottetown, and some of the small airports in Nova Scotia, they're all sim add-ons. Also amazing software. I strongly recommend, if you're flying in that area a lot, to get the sim add-ons scenery. Alright, so they would have switched us over to ground, and we would carry on, park at whatever apron we're going to, and that's it. Put my flaps up, and I think I'll put the wing sweep away. To do that, you just flip this knob up. You can hit H, and that just brings that back, or you can grab it and bring it back to manually sweep the wings. And that's good for taxi. Okay, I hope that was helpful. And please, if you like this, hit the like button and subscribe. I could appreciate the support. And if there's any videos that you'd like me to do in the future, please let me know, and I'm happy to try it if I can. Thank you.